Streaming now?
Apple? I don't know.
Oh, you mean the brand?
Okay, guys, it's streaming now.
Oh, we are, okay.
Oh, well, like, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna come in the streaming at the moment.
You're live.
Is this the mic?
No, that's a light.
The mic's, oh yeah, the mic's right where you are.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. There's your headset.
So that's the speaker.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
So
Don't blow it.
you can either put it on you. You can either put it on you, or you can just do it like that.
Every other teacher does ever.
Doesn't matter. They wear it too.
I don't want to wear it.
I know Tim wears it.
It's never here.
True.
Oh my gosh, Heidi!
I wore it.
Whoa. No, my hand's in the way. One sec.
I need to do my workshop. When I'm gonna do it.
Is that the world building one?
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah!
It's just gonna be me doing it.
What happened to?
No.
Oh, that's what we're recording.
No. No, you're just busy. That's all. So like, you just feel like he doesn't want to. There's nothing else he needs to help with. That's it. I don't even know what to do for anyway. We're just gonna do.
But I'm not on the staff, so it's not already.
No, say it.
Do you know what I mean? The art book page. Sketch that art book.
That's
We
right.
all get like a 2-page spread.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want, as long as it
Yeah.
compile it into an art book. And
We should do that. We should do that this year, or like even maybe. We could do it once.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. It's a good. I think that's a good idea to do the thingy.
Yeah. Re-elect.
Alright.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. I just said, somebody took my 3D artist, and I was like, oh my gosh.
I can't tell if you can see. Oh, there we go. So if anyone's here, then yeah, that's where you look. See the lights and stuff. All right. Cool. Well, I'll let you get all your shit organised. And you can have a big boy shit.
So then you have to go.
It's like.
Yeah.
Oh, honey, you might wanna like, when you have a preset, maybe put the download the Unity link from one of the channels you sent into that session chat.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm hoping so because originally I was like, I'm happy with this flow that is like still pretty crappy going with this. Yeah. All these people were like, what's the other what I'm gonna do something? I'm like, ooh. So now we can make it. But it does mean it's gonna take more time for people. So
When do people want to have a break, by the way? Yo, when do people want to have a break? Like,
It depends on when you think is sort of appropriate as part of this course.
oh yeah, true.
Because we don't want to like say 1 o'clock and then you like at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I
you get to,
reckon-
like a really critical part.
Like when you have a pause or something, that's when
Yeah. I think either when I finish going through like the PowerPoint stuff, or just when I finish going through like whatever. Yeah.
Now, do you want the lights closed and stuff? The lights are closed.
It doesn't really matter, but yeah.
Yeah.
This is okay. Yeah, I'm loud. I can hear that. It's getting stuck in my hair. One sec.
You'll get used to it, don't worry.
Yeah.
If you need any help, just follow.
Like actually holler? I can do that. I'll just shout. All right. I didn't really think about how I was going to start this. Hi guys, welcome to my workshop. This workshop is all about game development and just sort of learning how to use Unity and what you can sort of do to get started with that process, because there's a lot of different sort of aspects and areas of game development, and especially when you're sort of getting into it and just beginning, you might be a bit lost, you might not know what to do, and so we're just going to go over a couple of things, learning how to use Unity and setting up a little startup project in that. So, yeah. Oh,
That's fine. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. Right. Was yeah, and then yeah, it's fine. And then
I need to not be muted.
just
Oh, allow.
screen.
Yep. Okay.
And then
Screen one.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool. All done.
So, I'm not doing the introduction again. One sec. There we go. It's my rabbit. Yeah, I didn't have any good pictures of myself, so I put cinnamon on there instead. That is the most important part of this slide, is my rabbit. I'm Heidi. For anyone who didn't know, I am in my second year of game programming at AIE. I've been there for a little while now. I started doing vet courses there in 2019, and I did one in 2020, and now I'm doing one of their diploma programs. This is an advertisement. I've been doing digital art for fun for about 6 years now, and I use that combination of programming and art to make my own games. And I started making games about the end of 2019, so nearly 3 years now. And we're going to talk about some of those games. So, any programmer would have probably be familiar with this sort of stuff, using Visual Studio to just do some coding and make some console apps. Up in the top left corner, you can see a really basic text-based RPG where you just enter like a letter to choose what to do in any given scenario. That's a really basic one that a lot of programmers or game developers get started on because it's kind of an obvious thing to do. At the start of last year, at AIE, we did a bunch of this console stuff, and so I tried to make some more interesting applications. I made Snake in a console. I made another RPG that was half text-based, half not text-based in a console. I made Tetris at one point, which was a really bad idea because Tetris does not go well in a console, but I did it, and I regret that one. But it was there. At the end of 2019, I worked on some of my own Flash games, again for school. These ones were for Digitech, and these were sort of the first games I made that actually had visuals to them. Like in a console app, obviously, you don't have any sort of images or art or any of that. So on the left there, you can see the first game I ever made, which was just a car dodging sort of thing. You play as a car and you dodge the other cars. It was part of the assignment. I didn't choose it. Yeah, it was pretty basic, but it was the first game I ever made that had, all the art done by me, all the programming. And on the right there, you can see the first farming simulator game I made, which was for my final assignment of the year. And I just wanted to make a cute little farming game. And I called it Harvest Moon, made on a budget of $0. It took me 6 weeks. Terribly coded. In 2020, no, that's 2019. That should be, no, that is 2019. Oh, that's crazy. I got so much done in 2019. It's all downhill from here. Alec, you seem amused. Is something amusing you? Oh, thank you. So in 2019, I did a lot of Unreal Engine games. I actually went into my vet course one day and my teacher said to the whole class, he was like, okay guys, our platformers are due next week. And I was like, excuse me, what's due when? Because this was the first I was hearing of it. I had not been aware of this up until this point. So I sat down the next day at school and I said, the first idea I have is the idea that we're going with. And I said, okay, you play as a pot plant and you help these gnomes get their bucket back. And I was like, well, shit, guess we have to go with that now. So I made this game in a week. You play as this pot plant. He has a jetpack. There are some very violent birds that you have to dodge. And you could talk to the gnomes. This was one of the first dialogue systems I ever wrote in a game, which wasn't great, but it was functional. So that's the point. And this other game here, also very gnome-centric. Not important what the other game is. Don't worry about it. This was my project for 2020. Basically, again, for an assignment, the assignment criteria was basically make a 3D game. You can do anything you want. It just has to be 3D. And I was like, well, shit, I can't 3D model to save my life. So I started working in this sort of 2.5D style, we call it, which is literally just sprites in a 3D environment. And I just kind of rolled with that because I liked how it looked and it meant I never had to open Blender. And that went pretty well. I worked on this project at first for 3 months where I made like a whole demo of it. It had like everything that it sort of needed. It had fighting, crafting, dialogue. It had some small cutscenes, not like animated cutscenes, but like dialogue cutscenes, all of that. And then I did another 5 or 6 months on it where I got barely anything else done, but I rewrote a lot of stuff. And in 2020, this was sort of the game that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna keep going with this game for a really long time. And I didn't. At the end of 2020, I was like, yeah, this isn't working. And it wasn't working for a lot of reasons. And this is an important game dev lesson. Keep notes. Basically, there's a lot of things about this game. One of them was that the first version of it I made in 3 months just to get done for the assignment. And so a lot of things about it was rushed. The story wasn't very well thought out because I just took characters that I had used before and basically just threw them into a sort of RPG setting and made things up as I went along. I do still love these characters, and I'm still happy with how far I got in this project, and I think it was a really great learning experience. But overall, I think it was a really good idea to just sort of, at the end of it all, just say, yeah, this isn't working. I should go on to something new. So last year, we're back to the gnomes. We're back to the gnomes on this one. Another assignment, seeing a trend. Basically, this was for a maths assignment, and there's not a lot of maths in this one. But yeah, you play as a pot plant and you talk to gnomes. Again, it's a trend. This was sort of like a puzzle platformer type thing. I was gonna finish it and then I didn't. This was made in what's called Raylib, so it's not actually like a visual engine. I had to code in the positions of everything, and so I actually wrote sort of my own editor for this one that would let me, drag and drop different objects into the world, because otherwise I would have had to like write out the coordinate positions for like everything, and that would have been a pain, so I didn't do that. And yeah, I really liked this one. It was cute. Never finished it. Moving on. This is my actual project that I've been working on since the start of last year and continuing into this year. I have notes. Yeah. Forgot about that. Yeah, this is another 2.5D sort of game. You can actually see that I got over my fear of using 3D models in this one. The piano is 3D, the pillars are 3D. It does use that combination of 2D and 3D, but it definitely relies less heavily on sprites overall. And I've learned a lot through making this game. There's a lot of lighting stuff in here, a lot of shaders. I've definitely developed a better understanding of Unity overall. The dialogue system I have rewritten 4 times for this game. I keep redoing it. I think I rewrote it first, and I wrote it a second time, and then I went back to the first version, and then I redid it again. And I think I'm at a version of it that I like at this point, but you never really know. But yeah, with any long project, I think you start to revisit things that you did at the start of it, especially since through game development, it's a whole learning process for every project you do. And you might get to when you're finished with it and you look back at some of the stuff you did at the start for the same project, and it's like, yeah, nah, that's gotta go. But yeah, I'm happy with this one. And it's the game I want to continue making into this year and into the future. Also, game development takes a really long time. I thought I'd be done with this by now. I was wrong. I was very wrong. So, what will we be doing? Talking about all that had a purpose. Well, first of all, we're going to talk about what game engines are, the different types of game engines, and sort of choosing a game engine for your game. So, what the engine we'll be using for this workshop is just Unity, but there's a lot of different game engines out there that you can use. And so we're going to look at a couple of the most popular ones and some games that have been made in them. And yeah, we're going to look at the different roles of game development, because there's a lot of different things that go into it. And generally, when you're making a game, you do have a team. Haven't learnt that one yet. Yep. You do have a team, so there's different people who cover different roles, and you can kind of see how those roles interact with one another. And words like you can see programmers and artists are the most obvious ones, and we'll sort of talk about how those two overlap and just different people on a game development team. And then we're going to talk about Unity for a bit, very specifically starting a new Unity project, some good ways to learn Unity, and you can see a bunch of specific stuff there that we'll go over in Unity. Yeah. Keyboard, there we go. Game engines. So a game engine is the program that you build the game in. If you guys use like Photoshop for art, it's basically that for game development. There's a variety of game engines to choose from when you are making your game, and you sort of have to consider the pros and cons of each one. And some of them are good for some types of games and really bad for other types of games. So if you are getting started on a new game project, basically what you want to do is just consider what engine is best for you. So the two big ones are Unity and Unreal Engine. And I call these ones the big ones because they're the most well-known. They're both free to use. They're used by indie developers and AAA games alike, particularly AAA games use Unreal. But a lot of big game studios actually will have their own specific engine for their games. So those ones obviously aren't free to use or available to the public, but these ones very notably are. So you can see here Unity on the left. It uses a scripting language called C#, and this is generally regarded as an easier scripting language to use. It's very flexible. It's easier for beginners to understand, and it's just a bit less of a pain, basically. It manages more of the behind-the-scenes stuff for you. Unity, also in general, is very flexible. You can do a lot of your own things with Unity, and you can write your own tools, that sort of stuff, and you can sort of meld the engine into what you want it to do. And also just in terms of Unity versus Unreal, Unity has the better support for 2D games. Unreal isn't really built for making 2D games. So you can see examples of Unity games that have been released. On the left there, you've got Firewatch and Hollow Knight and Cuphead, and I included this because it's my favorite game, Pathologic 2. Got that reference out of the way. we can go on now. But you'll notice that they're indie games. A lot of indie developers do use Unity because, it's more flexible, it's once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to use. And yeah, it does make for really good indie projects. And also indie projects are usually on a smaller scale to big releases. So you don't really need to use something like Unreal. So Unreal Engine uses C++, which is generally regarded as a more powerful language, more efficient maybe, but also more difficult to use. You have to manage a lot of memory on your own in that one. So like freeing up space or that sort of stuff, you write that yourself. Whereas in C#, C# will handle that for you. Unreal Engine supports visual scripting, so like drag and drop programming. It's called Blueprints, and although that may sound easier, and it probably is easier than C++, overall, if you sort of want to go into programming and you sort of have a real focus on programming, I think a lot of people find the actual just written scripting, writing out the code yourself, a lot easier because it's a lot easier to keep track of. It doesn't look as messy. It's just from my personal experience. I used Unreal like 2 years ago to make gnome games, so you never know. Maybe I'm wrong. Unreal Engine is also very powerful. You can just do a lot in it. I think it's generally faster, has a lot of rendering power, and I have here that it's also just more focused on 3D games. So as I said, there's basically no support for 2D games in Unreal Engine. So some examples of Unreal Engine games, there's a lot of them out there. I just chose ones that I've played or heard of. You can see Octopath is on there, Little Nightmares, Borderlands 3, which I'm playing through at the moment, and Fortnite. Yeah, great examples. So some less well-known or less used game engines I have there Godot, it's called Godot, and Game Maker. So I don't actually know anything about these engines. I think they're better for 2D games. They're probably more limited than Unity or Unreal, but they can still be good choices. If you're making like a more simple 2D game, there's no reason to sort of put more work on yourself by using Unity or Unreal. So that's sort of what I was talking about before with choosing a good game engine for the game you want to make. It's all about, evaluating the pros and cons of different engines, and, I'm not going to use Unreal Engine if I'm making a really simple game because it would just be a lot more work, even if it's technically considered the better engine. And there's also some game engines that have really specific purposes. There's RPG Maker there. You can make RPGs in that, actually. Shocking. And also RenPy is on the right there. And that's a sort of visual novel engine, very specifically made to be accessible and make the creation of visual novels really easy. So, yeah. So this is roles in game development, and I stole this graphic from the internet. As I said before, there's a lot of different areas of game development. You can see in this one, they basically have production in orange, design in red, programming in blue, and art in green. And there's a lot of different ways that you can, break up those 4 key areas. So, for example, it has technical artists over here on the art side, but a technical artist is sort of a combination of coding and art. It would be doing a lot of shader stuff, and you want to have an understanding of how programming and art really overlaps in games. So if you were an artist wanting to go into the game industry, there's sort of like a range of different roles you could go for or want to be in. And yeah, same for programmers, same for designers. There's a lot of other roles. Game testers, for example, is actually a really important part of game development. Getting feedback on the game, finding bugs, all of that is really crucial to creating a really fun experience. And overall, one person can't actually achieve all of this on their own, even though there is a lot that some people have done. Some people have made entire games on their own. But overall, at the end of the day, you're going to need other people to test your game. You might need to outsource some work for music or sound or art, that sort of stuff. So that's why people generally have a team of people on that game. And you can also sort of see this chart here basically estimates, how many people or the ratio of people on each job. So you would want a lot of 3D artists, a lot of level designers and game testers and generalist programmers, but you wouldn't want to have as many producers, and you wouldn't want to have like 1 million people on narrative or anything like that. So for indie games, it's a bit different. You can see these are very commonly known indie games, and basically I thought about each of the leads on these indie games and just the roles that they would take in creating the game. So for example, the creator of Undertale, he would have been on producing it, he would have done sound design, he would have done composing for it too, which isn't actually listed here. He would have done all of the programming, level design, game design, and he contributed some art to that. So it's a lot more common to have really small indie development teams where people's roles just sort of overlap with one another. And, indie developers, if you go into the industry to, work on big titles or work on mobile games or that sort of stuff, generally you will specialize in just one of these areas, or, maybe have a bit of overlap. But a lot of indie developers tend to just have a lot of things that they do, and that's how a lot of indie games get made, because they don't have big teams, so people just have to know how to do everything themselves. There are other roles in game development that aren't listed there, so these are also ones that aren't thought of as much, and they are still a big part of the development process, but they might not be as hands-on with the game. So composers definitely are. Obviously, you want a soundtrack for a game, and so you hire a musician and you work with them to write songs, basically, and that's pretty different from sound design, because sound design is sort of, giving sounds when, I don't know, a player clicks on something, or giving sounds to the environment. They're very different jobs. The rest of these are ones that if you had a publisher, you would probably work with your publisher on them. So if you have like a lot of text in your game, you would want a translation, you would want localizers to get on that, because you probably don't know every language yourself. So even if you do most of the game's work on your own, you're probably going to need other people to help you with localizing the game. Marketing is a really big part of game development, because the end goal is overall to have other people play your game. And so there's a lot that goes into marketing. There's managing social media accounts. I put there that you would want to have, store pages. Maybe if you were doing a Kickstarter, you would want to have a Kickstarter page, and that would need a lot of sort of graphic design. Getting people to make that look good. And you could do that yourself, or you could outsource that work to someone else. And just ads in general, that could be video editing, writing, that sort of stuff. There's a lot of different areas of marketing that goes into a game. Porting is another one. If you're a programmer, you could do this yourself, or you could just outsource the work to someone else. That's basically putting your game onto different devices. So if you make a game that is for the Switch, for example, or you make a game that's for PC, you would want to port it to the Switch, to the PlayStation, to the Xbox, whatever, to sort of just reach a wider audience. And that sort of stuff can actually be really time consuming. So overall, is a job you could do for yourself, or you could get someone else to do it. And merchandise is the last one. It's again with sort of advertising. If you have any, physical things related to your game that people can buy or whatever, that's another job in and of its own. So there's a lot of different roles that come into game development. So this is on getting started with Unity. So let me read my notes. So one thing to note about Unity right away is that it's just a really big program, and that's because it has to support almost all of those roles, definitely the hands-on roles. So Unity, where something like Clip Studio, for example, it's very specifically for drawing, but Unity, you want to be able to support, the coding in there, lighting, shaders, all of that. So you have a lot of stuff on the art side, you have a lot of stuff on programming, you have all the different areas of programming, you have sound and all of that. And one thing about Unity is that it's very often used as a collaboration tool. So you have a team working in Unity, all doing like completely different things despite all working on the same game. So getting started with it can be really, really difficult because there's such a range of things to learn and you don't know where to start. So to sort of explain how Unity works. So imagine you have a robot here. You imagine this. Alec, are you imagining this? Yeah, you better be imagining this. You have a robot and you have a box, right? And the box has a bunch of different parts in it that you can stick on the robot. And so you stick some wings on your robot and it starts flying. Everything's working as intended. That's perfect. And then you give your robot some Yeezys. And when you hit the space bar now, your robot jumps. And that's still working fine. It's all perfect. This is what we call components, basically. And it's what Unity is built on. Unity, yes, a lot. Unity has objects. So in a Unity project, you have basically a list of all the objects in the scene, and all of these objects have a list of components, and those components are what work together on the object to make it work. And then the components, just to make it even worse, have their own properties and variables that you can change to make the components work differently. So with components, Unity has its built-in ones. You can see a lot of the on the side here, stuff like colliders, which, control collision in the scene. A rigid body is what's used to add physics. Text Mesh Pro is used to create text in the scene. All of that sort of stuff, Unity comes with it, but you can also make your own sort of components that is mostly a programming thing, and it works basically where you write the code for it and tell it how to interact with the other components and how to interact with the world. So now we're going back to our robot. Imagine you attach flippers to your robot. This is a new component and you go to run it. It was working beautifully before. You go to run it and it explodes, okay? This is the experience you'll have with Unity. So on this example, the components you would probably have, you would have a transform that tells you, where the object is and how big it is, where it is in the world, and how much it's rotating by. You would have the stuff that actually puts the robot on the screen. So that would be your mesh filter, which, you would give it like a 3D mesh, and you would have your mesh renderer, which would take that mesh and put it on the screen. That's your renderer. And it would also probably have an animator, which would control animation on, the legs, the arms, every part of the robot. And then components that we added would be the wings. So maybe when the up key is pressed, it starts flying, and it's Yeezys. So when its space key is pressed, the robot jumps. And the flippers, and that would be to make it swim. So when it's in water, gravity is disabled, but when it's out of water, gravity is used. And you can see what caused our explosion back here. It could be any number of things, because we don't actually know how the wings and the Yeezys and the flippers are going to interact with each other. Maybe putting the wings to make the robot fly, but putting the flippers to use gravity when the robot's not in water, maybe that caused an error. It's a metaphor. So, I have notes here. There's a lot of different, what's the next slide? There's a lot of different components in Unity, like a whole ton of them. And that's what I mean when I say that this program can be a real pain to use, because there's just so much to sort of get used to. And really, the best way to learn Unity is to just start on a project and start familiarizing yourself with this stuff. You can follow tutorials online sort of thing. You can, just look up how to use different stuff, look up what you want to do, and just over time, you eventually get a better sense for how the program will work, how all of these things work together. You'll find yourself becoming more familiar with different components and different, strategies that you use to make your game. for example, at this point, I've just done a whole bunch of UI stuff over the past few years, user interface stuff. So I'm definitely really sure of, you know, the different UI options that Unity has to offer. And so that's just come from doing it for years and years and years. So let's open up Unity then. Cool. So I put the project for this one in the session chat. Let me download that. I'll open it up on here in a sec. So that's a zip file. Can I show it? Yes. So you can see here, I don't know, I've extracted the zip template project just to downloads. And if you go to Unity and you go to project, I think it's open. Okay, I need to have a license. Let me get on that. One sec. I think so. Oh, we haven't? I mean, we installed a version of it. Yeah. I should have my own. I just need to sign into it. Don't worry, it's all good. Yeah. Okay, I literally just clicked on get a free personal license and it worked. I haven't done this in forever. So yeah, now go to open and yeah, that looks about right. So if you go to open and you just select the template project zip file, yeah, the whole folder, and you hit open. Unzipped version, yeah. And so what this is going to do basically is it's going to take a little while to open this one. It took about a couple of minutes at home for me. That's because for the zip version of this project, I just removed what's called the library folder. And the library folder basically takes all the files that you have in your game project and it turns them into formats that Unity can read more easily, or like it uses internal formats for all the assets. And when you remove the library folder, it's fine because it still has all the files in there, but it doesn't have the versions of it that can easily read. So when you start it up again, it just basically recreates all these easily readable versions of your files, and that will take a couple minutes. But the library folder is a really big folder, so generally for zip files like this, we don't include it because it makes the project a lot smaller if you don't have it. So yeah, we're going to be here a second. Yeah. Yeah, true. We could have a break at 1. So, I'll just show you. So when I open it again the second time and I realize it's on both monitors, it takes a lot less time to open up, and especially when you're just starting a new Unity project. Startup times are pretty quick, and the time to save everything and all that is pretty quick. And at my project at home, it takes like a minute to open up and a minute to close it, and you hit save and you have to wait for like 20 seconds. It's so great. Just love this. But I know, right? It's awful. Sam, I could have spent those 20 seconds playing Pathologic. Let the people know. The headset fell off. Oh, there we go. And yeah, once you open the Unity project, I'll just go a bit ahead here. You can see the file view down here. Just go into scenes and open up sample scene. And if you want, we can have a break now just while everyone gets this working. And yeah. It does look like the grass in my game. I probably took it directly from that. Huh? I spammed a bunch of pixels on like a cube, you know? Do you have a mouse? You can borrow my mouse if you want. Huh? Yeah, well, we can go into one. Yeah. Oh, you can have my mouse. It's right here. I'm not using it. Oh, you guys get to hear my headphone putting on ASMR. Okay, so this is Unity. This is a starting project using a terrain tool that I made specifically for this because I don't like Unity's one. Basically, just to get started with showing you guys, if you see up the top here, there's the little play button, and that is how you start your scene. So if I hit play, you'll see I have a cylinder and I can move it. Riveting stuff. Gameplay. And not only that, Sam, it doesn't end there. Sam, if I hit space, he fucking jumps. Okay. It's fine. My brand. It jumps. Yeah, so to teach you guys a couple of stuff, the first thing, he is pretty static. There's no like velocity in this guy. Don't worry, Sam, we will get to animation. I have plans for animation. So, we are not gonna ragdoll. It would be pretty funny. If you see on the left side here, this is called the hierarchy. And this is where you get your list of objects. So, if you see next to the player up here, there's a little arrow. So hit the arrow to drop down. And we have the camera. Now, what's going on here with the player and the camera? And I'm going to throw like a lot of these concepts at you guys. And as I said earlier, the best way to learn Unity is to just go for it, you know, and eventually over time you'll get a better understanding of it. So even if you're not following 100% of like what I'm saying, or I'm just saying a bunch of things, I still think it will be, you know, valuable to sort of get used to the project over time. So the camera here is what's called a child object of the player. And the main thing about child objects is that when their parent object has any change to that transform, so that's their position, rotation, and scale, it's also applied to the child object. So what's happening is when the player is moving left, the camera, because it's attached to the player as a child object, is also moving left. So you can see on the camera, its position is what's called a local position, and that is relative to its parent's position. So if we put the player at 0, 0, okay, can't go 1 sec. It's the character controller, whatever. If you put the player anywhere, the camera will be equal to the player's position plus its own local position. So X is left and right. If you've used Blender, you're going to hate this because Y is up and down and then Z is forwards and back. And I hate it because I always switch to Blender and I'm trying to like move stuff up and down and I'm like, oh, that's not how we do it here. And it sucks. Well, basically it's Y because on a 2D plane, Y is up and down. Y is Y. So if you looked at this like, yeah, 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 have fun thinking about this. It's the worst. You just have to go back and forth. So yeah. So Y, which is the up position, it is 1. So the camera will always be 1 unit above where the player is. And the Z is -10. So that puts it, in front of the player. So if I change the Y-axis to, 3, it goes up. And if I change the Y-axis to -1, it goes down. Simple stuff. So what I'm going to do is put the Y-axis up a bit, and then on the X rotation, make it about 15. And this is the sort of camera angle I use for my own game. I have the camera basically on a bit of an angle looking downwards towards the player instead of just straight onwards. But that's something you can play around with this stuff, just adjusting the camera position and rotation. Scale won't do anything, but if I went to the player and I changed its scale, you get a wide goddamn tic tac, Yeah. He's chunky. Anyways. What do we have next? I have like the whole list of Unity stuff. This is a very specific project. Awesome. The other thing we'll cover just before our break is the inspector. Over here on the right is your inspector, and you can see we have the player object selected and we have all of the player's components here. So the player uses a mesh filter and renderer to draw its tic-tac on the screen, and it uses a character controller, which is a built-in Unity object, and this script here called player controller will work with the character controller. This is a script I wrote, a really simple player controller. And it will use, keyboard inputs and stuff to move the tic-tac around. So you can see on the player controller, there is a bunch of different, parameters. The jump speed, height, weight, movement speed, and max jump. So the most obvious one is probably movement speed. If I put them to 10, and you can just change these in the inspector, you can see it moves a lot faster. Yeah, he's speedy. If I put it to 100, oh shit. Okay, I fell off. But yeah, you get the point. You can see here, if you jump, you can jump again, but you can only jump twice. So if you turn the max jumps to 100, you can now do 100 jumps. That's just, I don't know what people want to do with that, but I figured could be fun. And you see we get a bit of a bigger bounce at the bottom here if you drop from higher. That's physics, baby. And I actually manually clamped this, so you can only go up to 100. I just didn't see why anyone would need more than 100 jumps, but if you were the programmer, yes. If you wanted to play Doodle Jump, Hannah, fuck Doodle Jump. Yeah. Flappy Bird, no, this is a Flappy Bird free zone. That was removed from the App Store for a reason, okay? Don't you dare ever insult me in my house again. Yeah. Oh, there was 2 viewers and they both left. True. Nah, they're furious at the Doodle Jump slander. They are enraged. It's the Doodle Jump stance. Basically, If you want to change how the jump feels, you can mess around with the parameters over here. Changing the jump height will make the jump more floaty. It makes you jump higher, shockingly enough. Changing the jump weight will make the jump heavier. It will add gravity. Changing the jump speed. Anyone want to take a guess at what changing the jump speed does? That's right. It makes you goddamn fast.
Wait, so if you turn the height down, will it just be like a super fast jump? It's like super low.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, let's take our break. Yeah, I love the energy that we got to at the end.
The end?
The end. Well, it's not the end. We have some other stuff to go through. But yes, this is break. Totally.
It's quarter. Yeah. Quarter. No. Half time.
Americans? I should do the design class. I should do the design class. I'm upset with nobody else, but I guess is that. I'm fine with it, honestly. Is it? It's, like twice 3 years. Thank you. Look, I'm gonna have fun. Can we have non-CW members instead? You're the president. You make the law. You go to AI. You drop
I've
it.
said
I'll bring you up. I'm down. You're gonna be right here for this.
Yeah, he's community manager at
You get him to they're all gay. You probably already know what they're doing. I think I'm growing up.
We'll fill this room with people. But also, because I'm a community manager for Game
But like,
Pass.
this was the same situation we had with the Blender workshop last year. It was like the guy representing his friends.
Yeah.
Were you there for that? Was it right?
No, I wasn't there.
Yeah, it was like
What are your rules about having people in the space? Because we can
Well, it's a
engage
workshop,
with
anyone can
community,
show up.
every online people.
No, there's never much online.
Yeah,
It's just kind of us.
a lot of people don't watch that.
But yeah, it's good. You should put the video, once you change the thumbnail.
Yeah, I'm actually.
Put it on your Twitter with your guy. No, it's just she's got like. Have you seen her Twitter? Like right now.
You know, I'll let
Not
you
sure that I Twitter. She said, I'm pretty sure my Twitter is the one that's logged in here. It's not my personal.
Yeah,
Twitter
I'm
that
just
you
signing
have.
into my personal one on my phone.
Oh, it's not signed into any of them. I don't want to sign into it.
You don't have to sign into one to be able to.
Oh, that's right.
Still need to set up my Twitter.
You need to set up on Twitter.
We'll do it since I have.
I
It's still done.
want to delete all my posts.
Oh,
Except one of them is like personal diary, which no one ever looks at. Except you, I think that you don't re-interact. So I don't know how much you actually see. And one of them is my art Twitter, but when I do post,
I was like looking at you so suspicious.
like, you don't have access to my personal Twitter, and I'm not ever going to give it.
Yeah, I like just because you were wondering, yes, they're kind of being tweeted about you before.
Yeah, that was when that whole situation went down. I was being tweeted about you so much.
No, it's all good. Don't worry.
That's not a joke.
You remember the Rose Lives thing?
Oh, the communists.
Okay.
You don't remember anything, it's fine.
Memory of gold.
Incredible, it's a certain well. Yeah, what it is.
All we do is gaslight you.
Yeah, hold it.
I'm just turning the baby, and it's like that's what my face is.
Oh, damn. They can't
Yeah, oh, this is the, I'm sorry.
Quite
About
a
her.
basic.
Yeah. Food. Can I be a game tester?
Yeah, of course.
Beta tester.
Hey, can I be a game tester?
No.
I have
Beta.
You don't want to be. I have given you so much feedback.
I'm a beta.
Not a beta.
I'm a beta male.
I don't know.
Can I be a sigma tester?
You can be an alpha tester.
Thank you, Heidi.
You can be a delta tester. She can be a.
No, let's not bring that into it, thanks. I'm talking about like the sigma male. I'm sigma male, definitely not for like
She likes sound of the microphone.
Are you a sigma male, Ali? Why?
Might be able to maybe.
Okay, well that's fine.
Wait, what was, I stopped listening, He said no, so you're fine.
I'm a Sigma male in the fact that I don't get women.
That's all, it's not like, I was gonna say it.
I just, I'm also not a Sigma male in the fact that I don't get women. Best of both
I don't
worlds.
think you're right. I think it would be good to get just people.
Yeah. Well, like AI doesn't have a lot of 2D artists. We have 3D artists, so like.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah, literally, please.
It's not like we're desperate. We are desperate.
Yes.
That's why.
Oh, yeah. That's like, we could like sleep.
That's why I'm saying if you want Sketchpub, if you talk before, surely you could do Sketchpub AI like crossover.
Oh wait, that would actually be really
We're
fun.
like-
Because Sketchpub isn't just you know Sketchpub isn't just you know it's a kind of club.
needs to change.
Like instead of oh my gosh, if I get on the Sketchpub stuff, you're on the stuff thing.
I need to put like
Basically,
I really love how
The guy.
he's the balance. This is gonna be like a CD heat one. Sketchpub. You know, you never even actually research editing so friends.
No, but it would be really cool because we were talking about even though a lot of stuff I think the idea of seeing skip art.
Yeah, for sure.
But what if we had a project like it'd be cool.
I reckon. What do you reckon? Like every like half a year.
Every 2 months or something.
No, it's not.
Like a 6 month.
Remember we did 12 months and stuff. So like,
God,
I reckon like
I've been away from uni for so long.
Yeah,
Sorry,
like
like
a semester.
Mid-semester, every mid-semester.
every like we have workshops.
Please. Can I come to AIE and catch your class?
Yeah.
You know, just happen to show up.
Yeah, well, we're on floor 3 now, so you can like go to the eating area and be
You
allowed.
think
to
I'm
do
gonna
that?
actually go there without you
And
coming
you
down to get me?
I will be.
But the thing's been big. It's not big. It's more like
There's been beef between AIE and community.
it's not big. It's like
They have problems.
no. It's not problems. It's like
What are you talking about?
Where the edit, that's why, yeah.
start year 3.
They're different. I'm trying to tell you.
they never. The thing
No,
is,
I know what
like
they
are two different
They're
sorts.
different.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
once again, this isn't art.
As far as like the faculty is concerned, like the majority of these faculty don't give a shit because they're teachers, but realistically you've got like
Didn't you
AIE
just
makes
say
money
one of
from
your
having students,
teachers
CDW makes money from having
Yes.
students, so there's that.
There is
Yeah,
some
The teachers who
particular.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any. real
I think it's the
money.
students.
I think it's like it's all the big.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Oh,
nice.
I love it. I went there once, and everyone there, I did bully this one guy. Like there were 2 dudes. who thought
Yeah,
they were-
all
one
of
of them
them
was
like one thing, and you just went shut the fuck up.
It's very sad.
It wasn't like dumb. That's how it was. I've only been there once.
Oh yeah, they bent down.
Yeah, and it was really, really awkward, so I would rather be there on better terms next time.
I went there once, I think in year 11, So I was trying to
When are we going back to this one? We're just sitting there. Do you want to go, like, it's been 10 minutes, we go back to the copper?
I went there in year 11, I think in year 11, so I was trying to choose a vet course. I only did 3 subjects.
Right.
And
The business of God.
I think I was gonna choose either Q or ALE,
Right.
but because like I had experience with some of the work experience here on a year 10.
You did work experience here.
Well, not here. I did
Oh,
like
she did it.
I
Yeah.
have a mic.
Like experience it all first.
Dude, I worked software at so I worked in coding spreadsheets for a week.
It was 2015 or 2014.
Right.
Back when it was level 3.
Oh, right.
I think Jasmine wasn't even working back then. It was some other person.
Oh my god, the Asian things seem fun.
Before
Before it was like,
when it was just like 2 rooms with studio and
Jasmine is like,
like
yeah.
raise the extra.
Yeah, no, but if you want to, were you just like, well, we're going to consider you schedule for some dudes.
I was just thinking, like, we have the online on the 23rd. If you guys want to maybe, like, try and get a senior group together, because AIU people always go to
Oh,
that.
I've already organized this with you.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got all the good stuff.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to have a sleepover at my place after?
I just so I did not want to have to sleep with her.
Yes, one of my friends Danny,
Just
has like a bunch of friends and connections with the game that she studies research, I think she's a 3rd year now.
Right.
what?
Yeah, Danny, then she's the other person.
I don't know anyone's name. I believe. I think I've definitely met her. I remember something.
She's also a sexual options.
It was 2 people that needed something else set up. So.
No, that was Charlie.
No, me and Charles got the server, right? But one of the other person. It was you and someone else who wanted us to set it up.
Oh, that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah. Sorry, yeah. That's I was gonna say Danny. Is the one that like. Shit.
Right.
Yeah, she's from Sydney. She's got a bunch of people from Sydney, Melbourne.
Because, like, I'm just thinking, you know, for the online, we get like 100% people there. It's much fun there every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, if people working on games or if they want to.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And
He was slowly.
I never did any of
I want to learn.
Yeah.
It's a great especially for.
That's the next time.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I was going to give it to someone to
Same thing.
She's so nice. I've had like full conversations about psychology with her.
Oh, really? Shit. Well, I always
Hey, we
went
should
to psych.
Alright. Hey, it's good part.
Okay.
We're going back. Okay.
Good chat.
Why have I got a DM?
We got some
DM to me. Nobody's DM'd me.
She's like, yeah, but I kind of like art.
Yeah. I'll update your role. How did I do that? Update the role for the 2nd year. I had so many better aspirations.
Or you just edit your anything from the list.
Hannah, there's still time to be an astronaut. There's still time to be an astronaut. You can leave this place.
But I kind of like it.
I'd choose Mars over games any day. Oh! Just keeping you guys on your toes. Just a jump scare to get back into it.
welcome chat.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have on.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, no, I think that it is a bit separate. Like next to that, yeah.
Oh, can I bring it now?
Oh yeah, I'll grab that.
I don't need the. I had one thing. Oh, okay.
You don't need it?
No, I don't need it.
Are you sure?
Big difference.
Built different.
Big difference.
Born to die. World is a heck. Yeah, now we're censoring swear words. Give me 1 second. Huh? Okay.
It's too slippery on the tape.
Yeah, that mouse is old. Sam, you lied. You lied to us. I'm so sorry for doubting you. Anyways, let's get back to it. So, if you go back to our hierarchy up here, which, refresher for anyone who's forgotten, is the little section over on the left side here, and you click on terrain. Now, first of all, what's instantly annoying about this is that we can see the mesh collider. That's the green lines, and we don't want to see that because they're in our way. So if you go...
Sorry.
Huh? Yes, click on terrain. That's Unity, guys. This is a learning experience. You miss one step and everything falls apart. So, we want to hide the lines for the mesh collider. So, if you just head over to the mesh collider component on the right here and literally just hide it. It's gone. We don't want to see that. That's annoying. Anyways, for this workshop, I made a custom terrain tool to make some, nice, sort of more blocky terrain. This is one that I made one version of it last year for Delphinium, my own game, and since then I've made multiple better versions of it, and I still just use the bad version in my own game. I can't be bothered changing it over. But how you use this tool is you can see the brush size up here. So say I want to take 3 squares by 3 squares. And then to select tiles, you hold shift down and you just grab all of the tiles you want to use. And then you can see this green arrow here, and you can just drag that up. Huh? Oh, by the way, if the gizmos thing up the top here isn't turned on, you click on that. Make sure it's enabled. Yes, I coded this. Also, one thing I forgot to do. I think it's... I'll show you in 1 sec, real quick. Go to edit up in the top corner here. Go to shortcuts. They're learning. But real quick, guys, this one's important. Go to edit up the top, go to shortcuts, and search for duplicate. Okay, we'll get there. Just yeah. So go to edit, open up shortcuts. and then change the shortcut to duplicate to Control-Shift-D instead of Control-D. Okay, I'll show you again. So edit, go down this menu to shortcuts here. In the little search function, go to duplicate. And then where it says shortcut, double click on it and change it to Control-Shift-D. So just hold down those keys. Here, wait, let me see. I'll just come around because this is somewhat important.
Yeah, so we're just gonna save, and I don't want to save that. Save. It's okay, you can reset it. Don't make my notes. I'm gonna read the notes. Are you taking notes? No way, bro, that's crazy. If you get errors in Unity, I'm trying to yell so the microphone can hear me. A lot of them can just be fixed by opening. Okay, I'll get it now. Hands up. Please. How do we say your last name? Alright, so now change Unity to Control Shift. Yeah, let's do it. How do we say your surname again so we can like Wait, just one sec. No, I don't need me bigger. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I thought you responded to it.
Right. You need a mouse, man. How did you select them before?
I don't know.
Okay, this is all. Okay, let me take a seat. Let me try to. Let's try to keep saving it. We have a little Pokemon servers. Why do you only have servers with like a bra? That's dumb. It's really weird. Oh wait, that's the line 0. That would do it. That would do it. We got there. Okay, now as you can see, grab some fucking mouse. What the fuck is the arrow?
That's what we were trying to figure out.
This is odd.
Sorry, dude.
I'm not sure what the problem is. What I'm straight with.
Okay, got the arrow back. I don't know how.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I deselected everything, so Control D. Maybe you should just be able to drag it up and down.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from like this. But it should be. I don't know how to get rid of it.
That's for this. What's up?
Give me a sec.
What's what?
Getting that like drag.
Oh, there you go. All right. Any course.
How do you get the dragging working?
Control D. And then do it again.
Never like the dragging up now. Yay.
I didn't have to press shift right for it. It's slow though. My computer's not good.
Goodness, it's slow.
Goodness gracious.
Do
How do
me.
I put this back to like not being in the head?
You just drag it down.
Oh my goodness, I thought about it. Probably go back to the
Well, I just want to figure this one out.
whole year. Let's do it for a year. Yeah, let's check. I think also think that just take it like I like when you take a screenshot of it, you learn it, slap the text on top.
Oh no,
That's how I do my
Awesome. Thanks, Unity.
Alright, so to do some of those problems on the
Yes, this is actually a very typical Unity experience, so we're going to talk about it. All right, now you guys know what it's like to use Unity.
kids, people at home would definitely gonna have that in trouble.
All right, so what just happened was that we had some problems with this tool, and this is what we in the industry professionally refer to as a Unity moment, because it's a very common occurrence, and this is a professional term. So basically, we had a couple of different problems. One of them was that someone, not saying who, set the Y value of the brush size to 0, so there was no brush showing up. So that's not a Unity moment. That's on him. Yeah. What else we had was that when just painting in some terrain, for some reason the dragging just wasn't working, and we used the strategy to fix this is to save it, close Unity, and reopen it. And that is something you're going to have to do a lot if using Unity. This is just a thing that happens a lot. But in general, when I'm opening Delphinium, I have a 30% chance of it working right. I get 2 different errors. One of it is that Unity tells me the default layout for the inspector can't be loaded, and if I tell it to reload it, it won't work. So I have to quit and open it again. And as I said, it takes a really long time to open this project, so that's fun. And the other error I get is that the inspector is just broken. So then I have to quit and reopen it again. But every time, just quitting and reopening it again works. So that's the thing with Unity. It's not always the most stable program. And if you have problems with it, close it, reopen it, it'll probably work. Learning experience. Great work, team. So, yes, you can erase selection. You can use space. I have the controls in tiny text on the side here. So one thing about this tool is that it does use Control D to deselect all the tiles. That is actually duplicate in Unity by default, so that's why we disabled that in the shortcuts, because we don't want to have any of, we don't want to make a new terrain every time we deselect tiles. And I just did that. What's really interesting about this tool is that it does actually use a lot of the game development roles I talked about earlier. It has technical art because I wrote the shader for this tool. It has a bit of 3D art because the mesh is generated through code, so it requires an understanding of mesh. It's generalist programming and tools programming. It uses an algorithm called marching squares to generate the terrain. It used playtesters, actually. I showed this to a couple of people at uni on Tuesday, and they told me that the control scheme was shit, so I changed it, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, so for this tool, basically it's to just build some nice blocky terrain. Unity's inbuilt terrain tool, which isn't this one, has very smooth terrain, you know, the type of stuff that you would find in a first-person shooter or, you know, literally any game that's not blocks. And shut up. That doesn't really work very well. You know, smooth terrain doesn't work very nicely with pixel art, which is what I go for my projects. So I did have to build this just terrain tool. So what I like to do with this one, you hold shift to add tiles to your selection, and you just drag them up or down. And it might be a bit laggy because it does regenerate the mesh every time you do every time it detects like a change in the heights, but overall it does work pretty well for the most part. And it one thing about this is that all of the heavy work this tool does is done in the editor. So when you're actually running the game, it'll just give you the mesh. It'll give you, you know, the changed terrain. And so that is what you want. And so the optimization, you know, how fast it can generate the mesh doesn't matter during runtime. So I like just grabbing, making some hills like this. And you hit Control D to deselect all of them. And I'll put a little section in the middle here. You can see if you hold spacebar, you can remove tiles from the selection. And that's what I'm gonna do. And you can change the brush size over here. So yeah, this is this would probably be a technical artist's job in the industry. I just made this tool to mess around with. Because it's the sort of tool that I would want to use. Another thing that it can do, over on the side here, you can change the brush type to path. And so if I deselect all of those, and then I use shift, it will create a little path. And then if I go back to that, you can see, yeah. And the textures for this, we'll get onto this a bit more in a bit. You can change the textures. So this, I don't have sprite editor installed. We're going to do that in a sec, but not yet. This texture here is the texture for grass, and you can see the path is on there. So that is the top, that's the top of the mesh. The edges of the mesh are this texture here. You can see they also have the path of them. And then the side is just this one in here. And that's just, that doesn't have, you know, the 4x4 or anything like that. And if you want to do just a completely new texture, like you don't want to bother tracing over this or whatever, I do have the template in here. You can see the red section is where the path is, and the white and gray sections, I don't know if you can see it on the big screen, there is gray in there. It's really bright on there, but if you look at it on your own laptop, well, it's like, it's squares, you know, it's just showing. So if you click down the bottom here, assets, go into materials, and then go to terrain default. Yeah, it's just a really bright screen, but yeah. And then once you have, this pink circle, which shouldn't be pink,
That just means that the preview hasn't loaded properly. This is the actual material that's dragged onto the mesh. So you would import a new texture and you would put it up here. Yeah, it's not pretty if I use the default texture. So if you want to change it, you can see the gray and white is just your default, like that would be the grass, and the shades of red are the path. Pretty much, yeah. You can scale this to any scale and it will still work. Well, because that's UVs, whatever, mesh. Yeah, you're learning today. Mesh, UVs, whatever. And so what we're gonna do now, so we're gonna go, I need to remember how to get to this. I'll give you guys a moment while I refresh my memory on what's next. Yeah, so for a start there is just a reset all button which you're not going to use. For the path, when you're in path mode, you can see so path mode by selecting the brush type over here. You can see the red overlap, which is kind of hard to see on this path because it's orange, but if you hold space, you can just remove those tiles. So yeah, shift to select and I'm glad you guys think so. It took a while. I mean, you can. I mean, we can like, if you guys want to continue with any of this stuff later, we can go over on Discord or whatever. That too, yeah. Yeah. Tell me when I should go on with the next part, when people are finished. I'm just gonna... You don't have to do anything just yet. Yeah. Minecraft, but beveled edges. Guys, we're phasing into the world. This is actually an interesting thing to talk about. You can see when I jump down this way, you just cut through the world, you know? The way I designed Delphinium is very specifically so that you can't like ever find yourself behind the terrain, so you're never gonna get those like camera issues, but there is also camera systems that will like put the camera in the right place so that it clip through so that it doesn't clip through the world. Yeah? Yeah, what's good? Give me a... You've deleted all of the UI?
It's just gone. Oh, sorry, yeah. That's why my tangent. Go to window layout. I don't know what I'm hearing.
This is not what I was expecting you to do.
Yeah, you can go first and make mistakes. You know how when it's bouncing like that? You know,
Yeah.
like, did you show like not make it bounce the jump? Or
I don't actually think it can't bounce. I think right now when it hits the ground, it adds negative 40% of the Y velocity to the
okay,
player.
yeah.
Basically, it will always bounce at the moment, but that is something that can be really easily removed because it is intentional.
Yeah.
Anyways, putting the headphones back on. Let's go. All right, we are going to jump into Unity's package manager now. Now, a package in Unity. Stop laughing. Now I'm okay. A package in Unity. God damn it. Go to Window and find your package. Find the package manager. He's making me laugh. So it popped up the package manager just like that. I like dragging it up so it's up the top here with scene and game. Up to you. Now, once you've got the package manager open, up here, top right corner, change it from packages in project to packages in the Unity registry. And you see we get this whole list. Now, this is a bunch of different packages, shockingly enough. Just keep going. Yeah, they're just different sort of things you can add on to Unity, and a lot of them, well, it's another thing with Unity is like, you know, as you use it more, you understand more of how these work and how or what ones you're going to add to every new project. So I have already added some ones to this project, being the universal render pipeline. I think UI is included by default, and shader graph. The one we want to add right now is 2D sprite. So it's up the top here, and you just go down here and you hit install, and that will just add it in automatically. Right. So as you can see, my Unity project now has 2D sprite installed. And what this does, down the bottom here, go back to assets and then go into the sprites folder. And as you can see beforehand, when I hit, okay, well, first of all, these files are just imported as textures. And this, to put one of these in your Unity project, you would just grab your PNG file and drag it right in. So if I go and click on the one with the trees, I want to change the texture type to sprite, 2D and UI. And then I want to change some of the settings. I'm going to change compression to none and filter mode to point no filter. And then if you watch down here, you can see when I hit apply, it changes it to a sprite. Now you'll see that and so also change it sprite mode from single to multiple and hit apply again. I'm just gonna wait for people to catch up on that one. Can you guys give me like a thumbs up when you're Okay, so once you've applied those changes, go to Sprite Editor. And this is something that could not be opened up until the 2D Sprite package was put into the project. So as you can see,
we have multiple sprites on this image. And what happens when, okay, what is this? What happens when I just drag the whole thing? Does that? Nope, that creates a material. Don't do that. Don't do that. If I were to put it on a sprite object, you don't. What is this? Why is it not letting me use it with sprite? Oh wait, nope, that's right, because there's no sprites in here, right? Don't do this. If I had it as a single sprite, there we go. As you can see, if I wanted to put a sprite in the world, it would be all of them. We don't want that. So we want to have it as multiple. Sorry, I was demonstrating something and it got away from me. Back to the sprite editor. So so what we want to do is we want these objects, right, to be separated into their own boxes. But unfortunately, I don't know what geometry is. I'm not going to do that myself. I have more important things to do, like, yeah. Anyways, up the top here, you can get Unity to automatically slice a sprite sheet for you. So we want to hit slice. And you can see the options here. We want the pivot, which I'll explain in a sec, to just be at the bottom. And then automatic and delete existing, same as before. So once you've got that, you hit slice. And as you can see, we've got all our trees nicely sliced into their own little boxes. That's lovely. Yeah, the pivot is bottom, so. So real quick, I love the look, Alec. Don't know what's going on. He's just chilling. Okay, so real quick, I'll explain the pivot. Basically, it's where the coordinate 0, 0 is on the sprite. So if you were to rotate it, and I can explain this a bit better once we're out of the sprite editor, it would rotate around that point. So we want the 0, 0 coordinate of this tree to just be at its trunk, at its base there. And same for all of these. So as you can see, we have 2 trees and some grass. So you hit exit on the sprite editor and you hit apply. And what you can now do is down in the inspector, and I'll pause for a bit after this if people need to catch up, is you can see all your different sprites. And if I want this goddamn tree, I can put it in. Yeah, it's tiny. So to fix how tiny it is, you can change the pixels per unit. And we're gonna give it a pixels per unit of like. So if you click on the sprite again in the assets like section down the bottom there, yes. I'm gonna give it a pixels per unit of about 10. And with this, basically, words. I've forgotten what I was gonna say. With this, basically, yeah. I was gonna go somewhere from here. Give me a moment. I am having a total mental blank. Right. Pretty much, yeah. So the pixels per unit, if I put a cube, ignore this, if I made a cube, 10, because this is 10 pixels per unit, it basically means that 10 pixels on the sprite is equivalent to 1 meter in the game. So keep that in mind. Yeah, it's a tree. Look, it's gonna work out. Yeah. And I believe I did already make a sprite material. Let me just look for that. Yeah, so on the tree here, no, on the tree, you can see the sprite renderer. So just to recap, if you just drag a new one in, it will do that automatically. But what we want to do is we want to change the material from sprites -default to sprite _default. And that puts lighting on it and makes it opaque. And one thing I could do with yeah, so if you hit, yeah, it's pink. And one thing I could do is have two of them and change the rotation. And now we have a goddamn pine tree. See this? Okay, so if I go back to here, as you can see, we have one tree. And in the rotation of the transform, we want to set it to 45. Now, go over to the hierarchy, right click, and hit duplicate. And then change the rotation of this one to -45. There we go. We got a pine tree. I mean, you can grab the second one and just drag it on to the first one. Yeah. Yeah. And you see you can drag them both around now. And we have our little pine tree. The lighting direction is a bit off. That's another thing. If you want to change the rotation of the light, grab the directional light, change its rotation. But that's not important right now. All right, is everyone up to date with that? Okay. I'll come around again. Don't worry, don't worry.
I mean, okay, if you want to change the scale of them individually, see, it's 1:1. So you can just change it. But, oh, yeah, I have to change the top thing that allows the Alright, let's do it. So, where I did the I'm sorry.
No, I feel like complicated.
So, if you do go into like the game playing, then you need to so now I like
Sure. No, like if you, no, like you can play the place and you play so as uniform is short. Apply for the job as uniform.
this object between the sprite render. We want to change the material. Right.
Show the individual types in the chunk.
Yeah,
Really funny. So, with that, like, the map is interviewed, and then you end and then rub it through KFC.
You should interview at all three big fast foods in different years. Craigslist.
Is that even a thing anymore?
Might be fortunate.
so yeah, be careful.
I have no idea. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember. Did I ever? I sent you that sexy Kermit statue. That wasn't a meme. I found that on Facebook. Hey Heidi, don't take this one way, but when you're like just sitting up there, and it's like there's no weird line.
Don't ever start a what?
Java.
Java? Okay, I don't know. I barely know. Don't.
It's whatever.
If I like Sharon kind of guy. That's all I can say.
Anyway, let's get back to let's get back before we start to put Java on live recording.
I was originally gonna show us how to put animations on the Tic Tac. We're gonna leave that to the end because I don't know how long it will take and it will definitely be a pain. Yeah, exactly. So instead, no, I didn't mean that as like an insult. I'm chill. My point was that it would take longer, you know? So instead, go to assets, click on the materials folder. We're going to write a shader. So right click in the materials folder, go create, and up the top here, folder. And we want to name it wind. God. Open the wind folder. Now, this is another packet. Sorry. Should I ban the bots in the chat? Yeah.
Oh, just leave them. Like those here, like the YouTube explains.
Add moderator. Not gonna do that. Okay, so in the wind folder, go right click, go to create, go to shader, and then go down to PBR graph. I'll leave that up for a sec while everyone grabs that. Wind is a new folder we created. So if you go into materials, yeah. Shader is third from the top, I think, in the create menu. So like, if you go from create. Oh yeah, your layout is a bit different. Let me come look.
That's what I said. Natalie, I was like, yeah, no, you were like online throughout college.
And so sorry, Heidi.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's funny. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, all good. Okay, so yeah, hit on PBR graph, name it wind, hit enter, and you get this little blue box. And then double click on that one, and it'll open up a shader graph. So I have my notes. I remember how to do this. So shader graph uses visual sort of scripting. It's not programming entirely, and it's drag and drop sort of stuff, but it is sort of a combination of programming and art that's quite common. So if we go over the side here, when you right click in shader graph, you get the option to create node. Yeah, it is. I haven't actually done any shader stuff in Blender, but it's yeah. So we're going to start with create node, search for time, and then click on the time node. And we get one of those. Yeah, I've used Blender like twice. Definitely a pro. And then we're going to create another node for gradient noise. Now I'll pause for a sec after I've put these ones in. I'm going to create another node for tiling and offset. And then we're going to create a multiply node. So we want to take the time and drag it into the multiply node. We want to put the multiply node in the offset of tiling and offset. You can like hide that because it's not very informative. And we want to take the output of the tiling and offset node into UV on gradient noise. And as you can see, that's moving pretty fast. Yeah, I'll give it a moment. For this one, I don't know, do people want to do like a thumbs up when they're done or something? Thanks, Alec, very cool. Oh. It's going. It sure is. All thumbs up? Awesome. All right, can I go to the next step? Okay. We are going to use yeah, no, all good. Up the top here, you can see in the top left corner, it says wind, shader graphs, and there's a little plus arrow. This is where we're going to add, I think they're called properties or parameters, and we're going to go with properties. We're going to click here, and the first one we want to add is a texture 2D. So click on that one. How? Okay. Okay. Don't know how. That's a Unity moment, as we call them. Yeah. I'm just gonna put the values in for this one. So I name it main text, and the reference is important. So you want to write underscore main text, exactly what I put up there.
And yeah, thumbs up when we're done again. No, it's all good, no rush. Alec, toes up. So Sam, you click on the plus. Okay. All right. Okay, Alec. So right, I'm going to texture 2D. Click on that. Change the name up the top here to main text. I mean, changing the name of a property should not change anything. And then on this next one, on reference, underscore main text. Yeah. And do exactly what I have highlighted up there. All right. Now, we're gonna go here and go to vector 1. Yes.
Wait, it made something called vector 2.
Hmm?
It made something called vector 2.
I
don't
Hannah, do you have one called float? Yes, okay, you will be using floats then. Same thing. Hmm? I think it's vaguely different Unity versions, but it's like yeah, let's so for this one, name it wind speed and give it a default value of 0.1. And we're gonna add a handful of these vector or float values in, so get used to the process, I guess. You don't need to change the name, the reference of this one. And so you want to grab the wind speed and drag it so it's just right. Yes, Alec? I don't fucking know. You think I wrote the engine? You think I made this? Okay, we'll speedrun it. Okay, no. Okay, so grab wind speed and drag it to the left of the multiply, and then drag it into the B slot of the multiply. And yeah, so you want the default value to be something pretty low. And for now, you can also like change this to be, you know, negative if you want it to go the other way, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Now we're going to take main text from up here, throw it out there, and drag it into a sample texture 2D. That's what the node is called, sample texture 2D. You have to add it. Yeah, well, basically, since I was dragging from main text, I could just find ones it can already connect to, but yeah, it's not important. So we want to take where it says RGBA4, we want to grab that one and drag it into the albedo, or for Hannah, that's base color. Okay, well, moving on. You should be. We want to take the A value, which is the alpha, and put it into alpha. No one make any jokes. And for the alpha clip threshold, we want it to be about 0.1. Yeah. Yeah, all good. All right. Thumbs up? Yeah, okay. Now up the top here, right click, create node, and we want to do position. And with this node, we want to change the space from world to object. Yep. Then taking the output from the position node, we want to drag it into a split node. Yeah, wait, we are hacking into the main. Split in 4 or split in 3, same thing. Now you can see in the split node, there's R, G, B, and A. Oh, usually it would be colors. This is the position. So R is the X position, G is the Y position, and B is the Z position. And what we want, because this, basically what we want on this one is, actually, first of all, sorry to be confusing, we're going back to the gradient noise. So drag this into a subtract node. So A on subtract, I'm gonna hide the preview. Actually, no, I'm not. And we want to do subtract 0.5. It is. Love this system. Efficiency. All right. So on this next one, let me double check again. Because there is like 70 different steps to this one. Okay, now what we're going to do is go down here, create node, UV, so geometry UV. And we're going to split this one again. And we're going to take the G value and put it into the first value of a power node. Yeah, or yeah, power A. Yeah, the G is Y, so you can see. Yeah. That's usually alpha, like the opacity of an image. And we're gonna add another vector1 property. Call it wind mask. Nope. Yeah. Yeah, we're all good with that. And we're gonna set it to a default value of 1. Drag it in and connect it to the B section of the power node. What jokes? This is the learning environment, guys. Okay, the next step is to take the result from the power node and multiply it, put it into the B section of a multiply node with the subtract result. You can see. Multiply doesn't matter. I put it. Okay, we're gonna make another vector1 property and call it wind strength and give it a value of 0.2. And then we're gonna multiply the result of the multiply node with wind strength. So I'll give it a moment. Lots of multiplying.
Oh, bro.
Don't worry, you got this.
Control of mouse.
Feels like
It's worse. Alright.
It's alright, it's gonna be recorded.
It's okay, guys. I have a gift for everyone after we get through this.
I'm not gonna be here.
Well, it's not a big gift. It's just something I put in the project that people will hopefully think is cool. Okay, we all good for this section? Okay, so now if you take the position from up here, so what we want to do is create a vector 3. So search for a vector 3 node. And we also want an add node. Yeah. So we're going to take the B, X, Y, Z. Yeah, we're going to take the B value from the split. I'm going to do this quickly with the multiply node and put that into the Z value of the vector 3. And then the G from the split node goes into the Y of this vector 3. And the R of the... Yeah, yeah. We're there. And I'm just going to change the preview down here to a quad so people can see properly what's happening.
Well, good for you.
All right, we all good?
No.
Okay.
Still got one more thing to float around.
One more thing that's floating around. This one? Oh, what are you going on?
Sample text here to
Oh, right, yeah. So we want to move this up to the front here. It does become a bit of spaghetti. And what we want to do is we want to take this vector 3 and attach it to the vertex position. I'll just have this up. Alec, you're working hard. I respect that. Anytime, son.
being a teacher's pet.
I think I've got it. But what's your number?
Okay.
I'm gonna go in 10 minutes. I'll have to
Go back to scene. Oh, wait. Hannah, I'll come around and check that on yours because the PBR master is actually like the lit graph on yours.
Oh, good. You were holding that.
Yeah. So just from that angle, it looked like a rock. That angle.
Yeah, this section down here.
Eerie. Oh, it's,
Holy cow.
yeah.
Holy cow.
Now we're gonna see what this looks like on our sprites. Let me get back into my chair.
Yeah.
Cool kid chair. No way. All right, head back over to the scene. We have our pine tree here. In the assets, you can see we have the wind graph at the bottom here.
right click it, go to create, and click on material. And just name it wind default. It sure is. So on your pine trees or whatever sprites you have, I'm going to select both of them. You can see, just hold shift, click on both of them. And I'm going to drag this wind material into the material section. And you can see now that the pine tree has a bit of wind to it. It's foliage, yeah. Okay, wait, let me see. It's working now. It's wobbling, no way. So one thing I'm gonna do is go into wind, go to the settings, and just change it to two-sided, just so I can see every side of my tree. That's not important, so don't worry about it. But if you click on your wind material, you can change the parameters of it now. So if I wanted a really goddamn wobbly tree, look at him go. He's schmooming. Yeah. And you see that the base here doesn't move as much as the top of the tree. And that's what the whole wind masking thing was for. Basically, if we went over here, in this thing here, the black values represent 0 and the white values represent 1. And so when you multiply the gradient noise by the mask, it makes the values at the bottom there closer to 0 or just 0. It's all connected. And so if I wanted to go into this one, I could change it to a different type of tree. And it's wiggling. Anyways. I will actually leave the animator stuff for the next session, because that's going to be a pain. So, for the end of this one, right-click on your hierarchy and go to 3D Object and click on Plane. Is everyone following? You can see here we have a plane. I am going to remove the mesh collider from this plane. So right-click it and hit remove. I'm going to drag it into the middle here and just adjust the scale a bit.
And then in the mesh renderer, I'm gonna hit water material. We got some water. Yeah, so you hit on mesh renderer, click on, so you see here? Mesh renderer, where it says materials, click on the little circle next to water material, or to the current material, and just select water material. Yeah, I made this one. So if I played this now, real quick, you can go in the water. Okay. One sec, I'll make the camera higher. Yeah, you can see how like the player has, I mean, huh? Oh, okay, I just agreed by default and I was like, wait a sec. Man, that bridge is iconic. And yeah, that's where we're gonna leave it for today. If you guys have stuff you want me to, like, just small thing you want me to work on over the next week that I can come in next week to add to this little scene, let me know. We do have a bit of the time now, just half an hour left. Yeah, I know you gotta go. So yeah, that's what we're gonna cover for today. We can, I don't know, just mess around in Unity now. Yeah. Oh, thank you, King. All right, I'm coming to join you guys.
Still recording.
You know what? That might be smart.
Say goodbye. Yo, wait. Look at my wallpaper. My profile picture a while ago was ketone. Like, yeah, I had to change it to the background. Like, I just got rid of something again.
All right, so I'm gonna save this project here and pick up on it next week. If anyone's watching at home, the same thing applies to all of you guys. If you have anything you want me to add to this project that we can go over for the next session, let me know. Thank you guys for coming. Next Thursday. Next Thursday. That's the one. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'll come to your house. Anyways, thank you. I don't know how to end the stream. Oh wait, is it the end stream button?
Yeah, just click on there, and then
Sam, give me a hug.